Okay, welcome back to Rand on Real Estate. This is Greg Rand, your host. The website is gregrand.com. You're listening to 77 WABC. We've been talking about the Great Depression. And I've been promising you all that it wasn't going to be the kind of conversation you're used to hearing about the Great Depression, because we're going to speak to somebody who lived through it and talk about how a real family survived and even thrived, as bootstrapping entrepreneurs will always do during the dreaded Great Depression. So I've got on the phone my Uncle Vinny. How you doing, Uncle Vinny?
Good.
Uncle Vinny is actually my wife's uncle. He's calling in from Maine, and he told me some things about his life during the Great Depression that I just had to share with the listeners of this show. So, Uncle Vin, first of all, how old are you?
I'm 90 in September.
All right, so don't rush it, right? You're 89. You didn't. What happens? You get to a certain age and you want to hit the next one so you can brag about the next one, right?
Yes.
Right. And that makes you what? You were how old during the Roaring '20s?
Well, I was born in 1920.
Okay.
So the Depression had started just prior to that, and I lived through the rest of it.
So the Roaring '20s, so when you were just a little kid, but you probably don't remember, which was the Roaring '20s when things were going great, but right around when you were just 9 years old, and the stock market crashed, and everybody hears and sees images of that experience. But tell us about, you were in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yes.
And how did your family make a living back then around that time?
Well, as you know, my mother and father are both from Czechoslovakia, and the first thing they did when they came to this country was to open a store, a grocery store, a neighborhood store. And they bought a house, and actually at one point converted the house into a grocery store on the ground floor by knocking out the partitions and keeping the top of the house for the family.
And how big was the family?
The family was 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so what, 5 kids and the parents?
Right.
Okay, so you had a family of 7 living in on the second floor of a piece of real estate, and the first floor you all gutted it and turned into a grocery store.
Yes.
So now the Great Depression was happening, and we're all familiar, and I'm trying to be very careful here, Uncle Vin, not to sound calloused about the whole thing, but I just want, I hear the way people talk about it today, and all anybody focuses on today are the sad stories. And there's opportunity to live, and we don't want to see people be so fearful to live and invest. So I thought it would be useful to talk about now. So you had the grocery store downstairs. That's a pretty good idea, because if you're worried about not having enough to eat during the Great Depression, it's nice to have food downstairs, right?
Sure.
And
that's actually true.
Yeah?
Yes, we always were reminded that we were living fairly well because of the store. The meats that didn't go quickly enough, we found them in our soups.
Okay.
So
now tell me the story. Tell me about the sugar.
Oh, yes. When things were really very difficult with the store, even we were surprised one day to find that for no reason at all we were given a wagon. And my mother and father very quickly said, "No, this wagon is not for play. Every week we're going to go out to the IGA store on Main Street, and we're going to buy up sugar in very large weights. And we're going to bring them home pulling the wagon. And that once we got home, then we would divvy up the sugar into 1 and 2 pound quantities to be put back on the shelf to be sold to the neighborhood at a slightly increased price."
So you, at the age of something in the early teens, were learning the principle of wholesaling, then retailing, by going down the street, and then by virtue of taking that big 50-pound bag and dicing it up into 1-pound bags, you were able to create a profit for the family, basically.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Now, I don't think I was aware of exactly what was going on, but I know that we had to work.
Did you get a chance to play with the wagon at all?
Well, ultimately we did, but it was restricted to the backyard and just in front of the store.
Now, speaking of the backyard, there were some turkeys involved in this, weren't there?
Yes. Mom would go to the farmer's auction every week, and she'd invariably come back home with something for the backyard in the way of chickens. Around Thanksgiving, she'd have 3 or 4 turkeys. As the Easter holidays came, she would have a couple of geese and a very odd-looking bird called a guinea hen. And those birds were kept together in a fairly large pen, and they were regular stock. And my mother would butcher them, and we would pluck them.
You'd have something new to sell when the holiday season came along.
And then it was sold in the store.
That's beautiful. So it really is a story of just doing what made sense and being an entrepreneur back in that day. Yeah. Now, I have my wife, your niece, came out of the attic one day with a box of these old beer mugs. And when I asked her, first of all, where did they come from and why had she been hiding these beautiful things for so long, she made some reference to a speakeasy. Is this around the same time?
Oh, yes. In fact, I was going to ask you if it was all right for me to talk about it.
Well, they're not going to come arrest me about a speakeasy. They might come up to...
How about me?
Did I say he was in Maine? He's in Nebraska.
Thanks. Yes. Every second week or so, Mom would be up in the kitchen, and she had a copper pot that she used to boil laundry in to clean it if it was excessively dirty. And she had one similar to it, and that was only for making home brew.
Okay.
And then we had to siphon the home brew from this large container into the bottles and cap them and store them. We had boxes to store them in, and we put them out to age.
So you guys were like the Costco of the 1930s. You had everything. You could stop in, pick up a turkey, maybe some crazy guinea hen, get a 1 pound bag of sugar and a bottle of booze, and everybody wins.
Yes.
I love it, and I love the story. And one last thing, Vinny, you have all of your siblings were successful. Yes. All of your kids are successful. Uncle Vin is a prominent scientist and professor and inventor. I got to think that the experience that you grew up with had to have shaped your sense of going out there and taking on the world and always knowing you could make your way, no matter what.
Well, I would suspect that you're right. The example that we automatically gave without even thinking of it was just our way of living. Reflects now in the grown-up children who are now on their own. Right.
Yep. And I know them all, and I know they all have that sense of being an American and knowing that the possibilities are endless if you work hard and do the right things and so forth. And I guess that's the reason why I wanted to have this on the air today, is I wanted to show people that there is a cost for over pessimism. There's a cost. If you're a parent out there and you can hear my voice, the idea that, this is not the end of the world. There are opportunities out there. We talk about them here every week on Rand on Real Estate and every day on the blog. And this is no different. It's not as bad as the Great Depression, but it's no different from the standpoint of there's opportunity for people who know how to go out there and find it and are willing to pull together and work for it. So thanks, Uncle Vin. You're a great guy. I really appreciate you coming on the air. We'll have you on again. I hope you had fun.
All right. Fine,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're listening to Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC. Thanks for being with us. Have a great weekend.
77 WABC.